Welcome to the Depth Perception Podcast.
We go in depth about the perceptions and misconceptions of optometry,
which includes the business of optometry,
social issues within optometry,
and life as an optometry student.
Coming straight from Dr. Jasdeep Singh Soni,
Dr. Nadia Afghami,
Dr. Douglas Akiti,
and Svetlana Nunez. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome back to the pod. We got Kristie Lin, a special guest with us. So
hello.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Where did we meet? We met a couple months ago at a holiday party.
At the Orange County Optometric Society holiday party.
Right.
Yeah.
Funny enough, you're not even graduated and yet you're going to these society meetings, which is really cool. A way to be a go-getter and do that. Tell me about why you were at that meeting and talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm a second year student at SCCO, and I am involved in professional committee. So at SCCO, the way we have our AOSA team it's called professional committee. And one of the positions on that team is called the Local Optometric Society Liaison. And there are two people who kind of manage that team. The main liaison is a third year and I am the elect. So it's a 2-year position, and through our liaison role, we kind of are the person between local optometric societies and our school, so our students. And we get a lot of information about local CEs, networking events from the local societies. Frequent ones are like Orange County Optometric Society, LA County Optometric Society, Rio Hondo, anywhere in the general Southern California area. And we just send out monthly emails to our students. And that's kind of how we get information about these things to our students. And a lot of fourth years I know need CE credits. And the reason I ended up at the holiday party was because a lot of our faculty are very involved in Orange County Optometric Society. And one of our faculty members, Dr. Lin, she is kind of our faculty advisor. And she was telling us that they needed more volunteers at the holiday party to help sign in doctors. And it was a pretty nice place. And I was like, okay, I guess free dinner. And I felt like it'd be a great opportunity to go and kind of see our faculty outside of school, maybe get a chance to meet cool practicing doctors, which I did. So that's kind of how I ended up at the holiday party.
That's really cool. And shout out to Dr. Lin. I actually know her. That's my girl. What's up?
Yeah, I love Dr. Lin.
She's really cool. I really just want to interject real quick. Since we're talking about local societies, I work at a practice in Beverly Hills, and we're one of the hubs that is trying to utilize efforts for the fire victims and everything like that. Mm-hmm. So anyone who wants to donate things, eye drops, anything for first responders and firefighters, that location is Richland Eye Associates in Beverly Hills. So I just want to say that real quick.
Yeah, we can put the link. Is that what you're sending us earlier?
Yes, we can put the link in the bio when this episode comes out for sure.
That'd be awesome. And I can definitely pass along the information to our student body too.
Yes, please.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. I mean, well connected here. Thanks for mentioning that, Doug. But that's so cool. I mean, you're a liaison, you're volunteering, you're obviously involved with your class, and it was cool to connect with you and see. Even you said you were mentioning you're reading a lot of books about emotional intelligence and applying them, and I really loved hearing your background, and that was kind of why I wanted to have you on to talk about how the things you have done and what you are doing will help you be an OD, and some of the inspirations that you had outside of clinic. And outside of being an optometrist and outside of being a student. So when I kind of say that, I know you mentioned a couple of things to me in person, but things that happened in your past, I know you mentioned books you read or jobs that you had or people that inspired you. Is there anything that comes to your mind that you think will help you when it comes to school or being an OD in the future?
Yeah, so I guess in general, I feel like I'm a person who has a lot of random different interests, which is great, but also when choosing a major in school, for example, or choosing a career, sometimes it can be hard to narrow that down. So I'm very much a process of elimination kind of person. And I kind of just pick different things that I find interest in and learn more about it and see if I like it. And if I do, keep learning. If I don't, okay, that's great. At least I know I don't like that one thing. Talking a little bit about maybe the books that I've read that the one that Dr. Sony is talking about is Captivate. I think Captivate by Vanessa Van Edwards, I think that's had a really big impact on my life because when I first started undergrad, that was my first time moving away from home, even though my school was only 30 minutes away from home. It was my first time being in such a big environment with so many students that I didn't know. It was my first time having to make new friends, really, because growing up from first grade through 12th grade, you're with the same pocket of people for the most part. And I realized that I had been a pretty introverted person for most of my life, or just I have my core group of friends. I like talking to them, not super chatty otherwise. But then when I found myself during first year in undergrad, just amongst so many people and feeling like, wow, I need to make friends. I need to find a new community here away from home. And I realized that was really important to me, having people that I can connect with, work with, lean on, and support me through school and just even have fun with. I was like, I need to figure out how to do that. And so I started trying to join different clubs. I came across this book, Captivate by Vanessa Van Edwards. The title is very catchy. She says, like, the science to succeeding with people. And as the 18-year-old who really wanted to make friends, I was like, let me read this book. And when I was reading the book, I feel like it kind of helped me to get out of my head a little bit because maybe when it came to making friends, I was a little bit more self-conscious. And it kind of just taught me that small talk or even just connect conversations with people, that's something that you can learn how to do and become better at over time. And she really emphasizes that charisma can be learned. And being able to have a conversation where you make someone feel comfortable. There's little small tricks too. For example, she talked about something where when you're talking to someone or meeting someone, you want to show your hands because kind of evolutionarily speaking, your hands, if you show them, they indicate that you're open and there's nothing dangerous that you could be holding. Like if you're hiding your hands, you could be holding like a weapon, just, evolutionarily speaking. But subconsciously that signals like friendliness to whoever you're talking to. And then even just like when you're asking questions to someone about what they're interested in, if you want to learn something more about who they are, figuring out what sparks, asking different questions that help them to talk about something that really like lights them up. And I think that that book just really encouraged me to be a little bit more proactive about talking to someone and asking them questions because chances are they might also want to make a new friend. And so when I thought about it from that perspective, I feel like it really helped me step out of my shell. And then friend by friend, like little by little, I feel like I started to build a little more confidence in terms of making connections with new people.
I really like what you brought up, and I feel like I can kind of relate. I think when I first started optometry school, I moved far away from home and had to make new friends. And I think your advice is to read the book Captivate, right? And then I think what I would say is I would just reach out. I think if you don't have that personality where you can like go to a group of people and like start talking to them, and if it helps you maybe like read a book with like step by step, that would be great. Because in optometry school, I think it's really important to have friendships. And now like coming to the end of school, like thinking about where I was in second year and then like coming out towards the end of school, it's really hard to get through this program if you don't have good friendships. And you learn that you're in the first like 6 months of the program, Nadia, I think you also had to move for school. What did you do?
Yeah, I think that everyone kind of trauma bonded, right? Which is different now because there's a lot of people who went to school during COVID and they didn't have that, like, I don't even know how long ago was it? Do those people graduate? Like, are there any more COVID like
They
students?
just graduated.
That was it, right? That was no more. Wow. I'm old. I feel old. Yeah. So like when we were, because my second and third year, we were all digital, like we were all online. So really we could only form our friendships like first year, and then that was it. Everyone was kind of on their own. So it was a great first year. I had a great time. But yeah, then everyone kind of isolated. So it's a little different. What in your past, like you've had different jobs, I'm guessing, Kristie, that like you feel like, did that like impact you in school and that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. I grew up a swimmer. I loved competitive swimming. My family, summer, like hometown summer league team, my high school team. Swimming has always just been something that de-stresses me. It's a great form of exercise. And after most of my competitive swimming years were over, I did a lot of swim lessons. So I started teaching a lot of swim lessons. I really loved it. I taught a lot of little kids, like usually aged 5, 6 to 12 years old, anywhere from not knowing how to swim at all to maybe refining their strokes a little bit. And I feel like in doing that, I realized that teaching is something where you have to have a lot of patience, but you also have to know how to break something complex, what we might not think as complex, or me as the person who already knows how to swim, into something that's a little bit easier to understand for like a 5, 6-year-old who doesn't know or is afraid of even just touching their face into the water. So I think that over the years of teaching swim lessons, I realized that it's really important to know how to recognize that sometimes what you feel is more intuitive, innate, that you've come to become more of a pro on, that's not the case to a lot of other people. And we can apply that to teaching people how to swim, and we can also apply that to explaining maybe what disease your patient has to them, or what a contact lens is, or just, for example, we feel like, duh, you shouldn't sleep in your contacts or use the same solution again. But that's not necessarily something that our patients might think of or know intuitively. So I feel like that kind of helps me remember that, just to kind of keep in perspective, that whatever I know is not necessarily whatever my patient knows. And also, just to be able to also have fun, and the importance of connections, because the connections that I've built with my students, their parents, they are very meaningful to me, and that makes me want to have something like that in my own career. And that's also kind of taught me the importance of having a good relationship, or building a trusting relationship, because as someone who taught their kids how to swim and their kids have a good time, they just like see the process, and they also like me as a person, then they're more likely to come back to me, refer me to their friends. And importance of your own personal worth, your brand, and also how important it is to build trust.
Before you started school, like, it's you're 2 years in, you're almost halfway done, right? So my questions are like, if you could go back in time and tell like first year you, like, hey, this is like before even optometry school, like what advice would you give yourself and others who are starting on this journey? And like, what do you wish you could have changed that you like hope to like teach others about, since you love apparently, teaching and reaching out to your community and that kind of thing, and the optometry community, right? And your student community. So like, what would you like to say now that you can reflect back, like before you started school?
I think a big thing is, whenever we start something new, there's naturally a little bit of fear. Maybe you're a little bit self-conscious. I definitely feel a lot of those things before I do anything new. Even with going to the holiday party, I was like, I'm just the second year. I'm not sure I belong here. But each time, I feel like what gets me out the door, what gets me to sign up for the event, the new thing, is just to think, what's the worst that can happen? Or if I don't go, like, I never know what might happen. And I think it's really exciting to think about, if I go to this new thing, if I try this new thing, you never know who you can meet. You never know what you could learn. And I feel like each time, that just usually is what brings me back to trying the new thing, even though I'm scared, or even though I feel self-conscious or a little bit out of place, because I'm just like, oh, it might be exciting. Yeah.
Really, your advice is like, hey, just go for it, really, right?
Yeah.
Because you've been so successful in that.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And I just want to pivot a little bit, because word around the campfire is you are president of the private practice club at your school, which is amazing. I was president of Sports Vision Club from first year till I graduated. And I was a part of the student body as well, vice president. So I kind of feel you in that. But I want to ask, just for your aspect, what made you want to join that and become president? And how do you feel like that'll translate to after you graduate?
Yeah, so I guess a little bit of background. Even before I started optometry school, one of the reasons I became interested in optometry was because of private practice. And I knew that one of my strengths was definitely school. I'm interested in studying or science and healthcare. I like people, and I kind of came across optometry because I had heard about, oh, there's doctors who can open their own practice and have their own business, and that allows them the flexibility of having freedom of time and being able to spend with their family. And that's pretty important to me, and that's something I want in the future. And so the idea of turning my career into like a business, along with being something that I enjoy, like seeing patients and learning, that really appealed to me. And so I came into school wanting or interested in private practice. And that's how I joined the club just as a member our first year. And I found our meetings pretty insightful, just being able to hear from currently practicing ODs who own their own practices and talking about their journey into getting into private practice, their struggles, their wins. And before I started second year, the president of the private practice club kind of encouraged me to apply for the position. She also happened to be my friend, and I had thought about it beforehand, and I just felt like there were things that I wanted to see the club do a little bit more of. I wanted to see the club bring in more speakers who were private practice owners, because we did see a little bit more of corporate speakers my first year. And I also, as someone who wants to learn more about the nitty-gritty of private practice, what as a student I can do to learn more about private practice, I wanted there to be a more educational component. And so I applied with all these things in mind. And now in the position, I feel like it's been really neat because I get to reach out to and talk to a lot of doctors who have their own private practices and bring them in and hear their presentations, their stories, and work with a really great team. It takes a team to like run so many meetings and host a successful club. But I think my curiosity or my interest in just wanting to learn more is what brought me to trying to take up the position.
That's awesome. I mean, it's so cool learning about your background, and we're kind of seeing like the pieces fit together here. I think a lot of our listeners might be interested to hear about your perspective about private practice, what you've learned or what's challenged, what you think about it. Anything that you've learned or stick out about the process about joining the club since you've started it?
Yeah, so definitely when I hear stories about private practice owners and their journeys, I always feel like, whoa, that seems so daunting. But also sometimes they'll tell us like how they did it, and they'll also be very encouraging. I once struggled. I was a student too. I didn't know what I was doing, but here I am. So if I can do it, you can do it too. And I think that's a theme that has been emphasized over and over again in our private practice club meetings amongst the speakers. And just all of the doctors are so encouraging and kind and willing to offer their advice or assistance. And seeing that, I feel like makes the thought of doing private practice a lot more attainable, because I feel like before starting school, even during school, sometimes you'll hear that it's not easy to start a private practice, for sure. Definitely not easy. And especially maybe in somewhere where there's a lot of practicing doctors. But a doctor that we had come on recently, Dr. Ton Mai, he's pretty successful private practice owner in Irvine. He told me that if you have a clear goal, if you have a vision for the patient base that you want to serve, you know what services you're going to provide, and you just kind of build around your patient's best interests, you take care of your team, you do it right, there's really no competition. And I feel like he helped me rethink the whole, oh, optometry is kind of saturated in certain areas perspective, because if you build a practice that stands on what you believe in and also takes care of your patients, and you have a team that you take care of and they take care of you, then theoretically you'll be able to kind of build a successful practice. And I think that's kind of what he did as well. And also being willing to ask for help and find good mentors. So I think those are some lessons that all of the speakers have taught us.
Those are really good lessons, and I think you're putting together like the importance of building a network, and it's showing. And when you're talking about your career goals, do you feel like the rest of your classmates or your generation is similar to you? Like nowadays, as a recruiter, like I hear a lot from doctors, like, hey, these doctors, they just want to work 1 or 2 days, or they ask me for high rates. Like they're not really committed to like starting a business or working really hard and putting their head down. Do you feel like that's more of a sentiment, or do you feel like your classmates or the Gen Z generation is different? Like, what do you hear? What have you heard around your classmates and that kind of sentiment?
There definitely are people that I've talked to who just want to work a 9 to 5. We've already been in debt for so long. We've been in school for so long. They just don't really want to think too much about it and be able to work and get a paycheck, which is great as well, because I know being a private practice owner or any business owner is not easy. But there are also upperclassmen who also do want to go into private practice and ownership. And I think that shows in our meeting attendance. At least there are a lot of students who come out to our meetings. So I think that even though maybe some people might be on the fence, some people might be not as interested, I definitely have friends who have told me that they weren't really thinking about private practice, but since coming to meetings and hearing doctors talk, they feel like, oh, maybe it's something I could be interested in, or I'll rethink that. Yeah. And everyone who is in optometry school knows how to work hard. So I think it's more of a down to whether their personal goals align with private practice and if that's just something that they want. But I do believe that if people want to, if any of my classmates have that goal, they're more than capable of achieving it, whether it's something they want now or down the line.
All right, so we have something a little different that we're going to start with you right now, and it's called our mock interview segment. Are you ready for this?
I guess.
So
We're putting you on
What's
the
the worst
spot.
that can happen?
what's the worst that could happen?
Jump in the pool.
So we're bringing you back to the days of when you were applying to optometry school and you had to go to the interview. So pretend like we are an optometry school. You're a candidate. We're going to go through and ask you some questions and just off top answer to your best knowledge. You ready? Okay. Guys, who wants to ask number one?
Okay, I'll go. I'll go. I'm ready.
Should we get into like professional, like,
Serious
optometry?
mode.
Should I put on a blazer?
Yeah. Do you remember your interview? How many schools did you interview at, Kristie?
I interviewed at 2.
Okay.
I wanted to stay in California, so Berkeley and SCCO.
Nice. Yeah. Just, you'll just think back to that stressful time in your life and it'll be less stressful.
The Berkeley
You
interview was
already made
not
it.
Zoom, so this is
Perfect.
it. Yeah.
So why did you choose to pursue a career in optometry, and what inspired you to apply to our program, to the School of the Depth Perception Optometry?
What led me to optometry? Actually, it was a career quiz. So that's what initially made me think about optometry. I had already had a general interest in healthcare, but I took this very lengthy career quiz, I think for a high school English class, and it brought me to optometry. It had a whole bunch of different areas that kind of aligned, and I perfectly fit optometry. And so I was like, okay, let me look into it while I'm in undergrad. And the more I learned about the profession, I was very lucky to be at Berkeley, where they have a program, optometry program. So their pre-optometry club has a lot of resources. So I went to like conferences and chatted with current students, and just from what I learned, I realized optometry was more than what I had previously thought it was. Because growing up, I just thought, oh, I go to the eye doctor, I get my glasses. They offered me ortho-K, but my mom said no because it's too expensive. That was kind of it. But I didn't realize you could see diabetic retinopathy. Like I didn't know you could tell that a patient had diabetes just by looking at their eyes, and you don't even have to draw blood. We have a very big potential to fill a need in the primary healthcare department. A lot of times, like optometrists are the only doctors that some patients see because they come for their annual eye exam.
We would like to keep our questions and answers at about 1 minute or so.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
This is a new rule. Didn't tell me that at the beginning.
Okay, I'm trying to be quick.
Apologies for not elaborating earlier, but we're going to go on and move to the next question. Dr. Nunez, please.
Not cut her off like that, Doug. Okay, in an
It's
actual
okay.
interview though, I think you were doing great because you want to talk. Yeah, you want to talk more and like add more than what the actual question is. And we were all talking about how you're a second year and you're the closest to applying to optometry school. So we were like, we need to pick her brain and get this on the podcast too, which is why we're doing this impromptu segment. Okay, back to being professional. And now 1 minute answers. Okay. How have your academic and professional experiences prepared you for the challenges of optometry school?
So, academic experiences, taking a lot of bio classes, math, chem, all the pre-optometry requirements. It's a lot of studying. And sometimes when you don't want to do it, you still have to do it. And so I feel like that has built a lot of resilience and just diligence and discipline. And that helps with, even now in optometry school, when I don't feel like studying, you have an exam the next day, so you're going to sit down and study. So I think the discipline definitely is there from years and years of being a student. From working, I definitely think that working in retail, working with kids, having a lot of even just interactions with older patients, that has helped me work on my people skills and communication skills. And I think those are all very important when you're working with classmates, even shadowing, seeing potential patients in clinic.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So far, my notes include blood, kids, and classmates. Awesome. So to wrap this up here, my question to you will be, what do you see as the most significant challenge that optometrists will be facing today, especially as you as being a Gen Zer, I think? And how do you plan to address this in your career? 1 minute.
I think as a Gen Zer, we are very familiar with social media, with TikTok, with, I don't know if that's still here anymore, but Instagram. A lot of people, a lot of patients are getting their information from these platforms nowadays. And which could be a great thing, but it could also be a not so great thing, especially if there's misinformation. So one thing as future doctors, to kind of go with the times, work with what's trending, what the people are used to getting their information from. It could be great to spend more time making information more digestible and sharing it on those platforms.
Awesome. Very well. Well, thank you so much for tuning into the mock interview segment sponsored by nobody. I think you did really well. You pretty much killed it, and we love your answers. So thank you so much for that. Svet, if you want to go ahead and ask our last question, we love to ask our students.
Okay, so we wanted to ask you for your advice specifically for students who are pre-optometry students, possibly trying to get into school, trying to build up their application. So advice for pre-optometry students, and then share your advice for first-year students that are going to be starting this fall. Yeah, so then they have the summer and then they'll start the fall. So those two groups of students, go ahead, give your second-year advice.
My advice for pre-optometry students, when you're trying to build a competitive application, I know it's very easy to get stuck on your optometry only relevant experiences, but I would encourage you to think about all the experiences that you have, whether it be a music that you like, an instrument that you play, or a sport that you play, if you like cooking, anything. And just think about, amongst all of these things, why do you like them? What about these things like brings you back to it each time? And then pick out what is really important to you. What are your values? Do you value connection? Do you value giving back? Do you value learning? And find that common theme and connect it to why you want to do optometry. And there are lessons that you learn from all these experiences that are relevant to your role as a student and as a future healthcare provider. Your caring and compassionate like personality, etc. So I would say to find a way to think about your past experiences and how that connects to why you want to be an optometrist. And then for a incoming first year student, I would strongly encourage all of you to step out of your comfort zone as much as you can. And just if there's anything that interests you, go for it. Like if there's a club that you're interested in, join the club, go to the meetings. If there's somebody, a professor on campus that you want to talk to, go for it. It doesn't hurt to start a conversation with, I feel like, especially upperclassmen. They love to, talk to the first year, second years and just help each other out in any way that they can. And you'll find that, people don't bite. Everyone in optometry is really nice. And even if whatever you thought you were interested in doesn't actually interest you, that's a great thing too, because then you don't have to spend time thinking about it. You can move on to whatever else you might be interested in. So I would just generally encourage you to step outside of your comfort zone, go to conferences, go to local society meetings, even if you're just a first year, because then you can talk to currently practicing doctors and get their perspective. Sometimes it's nice to get outside of the studying and school bubble. Yeah. And it makes you feel a little more re-energized and like, I'm not just in school to be in school. I'm going to actually be a doctor. Yeah.
That was such a great question and response. It kind of ties in everything that we're talking about today. And it kind of goes with your brand of, that's just great advice for all of us, right? Stepping out of your comfort zone. Like, look at the conversation that you came to have with me. Like, you went out of your way to meet me, and then it led to be on this podcast. And now we're talking about ideas of collaborating and how we can help students. And this has only been 1 month, right? Like, imagine all the ripple effects from that. So I think for all of us today, stepping out of our comfort zones, wherever you are in your career, is a great thing to keep in mind. And I really love to think about your experiences because we're all critical thinkers. We're not just doctors or future doctors. And there's so much to apply, not just with your career, with that process of thinking. And it was cool to hear about your background, right? Like you read a book about like body language to make friends, which will help you with patients or would help you in school. You talked about the community you built, which will help you with maybe one day networking like you're already doing or building a business one day. It kind of led you to how you're building your network with being private practice club and being a liaison and volunteering. So it's really cool to get to know you and see how you're applying all the advice that you're giving already. And we want to commend you for doing that even as a second year. So props to you, Kristie.
Thank you. I also want to give props to this team because it's really awesome that you guys have a podcast that talks about all things optometry. I know when I was a student and trying to figure out how I was going to get into a school, learn about the profession, I did look up optometry podcasts. So I think it's really great that you guys are doing this.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And we'll definitely have to keep checking on you as the years go and see where you go and how you applied everything that you're talking about even further.
Absolutely. And make sure you subscribe and like and tell all your friends.
I'm sharing this episode to everybody I know.
That's right. Well, thanks for tuning to the Depth Perception podcast. Kristie, we'll have to have you on again and we're excited to have you back.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the Depth Perception podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe on all of our platforms, including
Spotify,
Instagram,
Google Podcasts,
Apple Podcast,
YouTube. Make sure you click that button. Double tap that.
So you guys have no reason not to follow us and tune in to the next episode.
Stop wasting time.
Get in depth.
Subscribe.